In this video, we're going to discuss the notion of having a base nootropic compound as the base of a stack, and then supplementary, complementary other nootropics in lower doses as a synergy and as cofactors to make up sort of a supplemental, complementary addition to that stack to make a good, well-balanced stack. Coming up. Okay, a minute and a half. Let's see if we can keep it under a minute and a half. I'm going to really try of promoting powerful nootropic products that the market is responding very positively to. Number one, the Cortex Nootropic Stack. This is a stack I was using to, basically make my brain function like the living this guy for nearly 18 hours a day. I was running a company for about 18 hours a day, and I needed good brain function, so I formulated a stack that I was using. I was 6.5 years into taking nootropics at the time, so I had a number of different things in my arsenal, a lot of different knowledge about nootropics, so I found the best stack that worked very powerful for mental energy, speed of processing, motivation, basically continuity in brain performance, and then we modified it to make it slightly better and put it in a commercial pre-made stack. It is called Cortex. It is powerful. Get that at livecortex.com. Secondly, we wrote 2 guides. These are digital guides you can download that give you instructions on nootropics. Stacks specifically, but instructional protocols, distinctions, all this stuff. One of them is on all the racetams. So if you're like, I need to know about oxiracetam, matiracetam, pramiracetam, piracetam, phenylpiracetam, fasiracetam, coliracetam, nephiracetam, get the guide. It explains all of them, and it explains sublingual, under the tongue, and then oral doses with all of those racetams. Okay, that's a racetam guide. Then we wrote another full-on, all-encompassing nootropics instructional protocol guide. It's called Smarter, Better, Faster. That lays out everything: PRL 853, modafinil, microdosing modafinil, Alcar uridine stacks, Alcar ALA uridine stacks, Alcar racetam stacks, choline sources, everything else you can think of. These are both digital. You can download them for any device you have and read them and get the stacks. livecortex.com. Lastly, we do nootropic stack consulting. Brain performance consulting in general. We had a couple of folks that were consulting on chronic fatigue syndrome. We got folks with thyroid issues that we're trying to help to get their brain function. That's my thing. I've been studying it for 10 years. Anyway, but the gist of it is nootropic stack consulting. We can make your stack perfect. If there's something wrong with your stack, you need some advice in your stack, you need to talk about your stack, 40-minute call with me, 15 additional email correspondences. Get it at livecortex.com. Was that under a minute and a half? I'm trying. Okay, so let's talk about the notion of the base of a nootropic stack and then complementary additional nootropic compounds to make a good synergized stack. In the latter part, and I say this often because it's prevalent, it's a prominent distinction. In the latter part of my years taking nootropics, I made all these distinctions, these critical identifications, call them. The first 4 years I was just experimenting with stuff. I almost felt like I was just kind of not being as surgical as I have in the last 4 years. 4.5 years of taking nootropics. I've total on like 8.6 or 8.7 years taking nootropic compounds. In that latter, half, I identified like a whole bunch of just subtle distinctions that really helped me to use nootropics very specifically. Like a good example would be like, because the allure of modafinil is so strong, to want to take it every day, you have to figure out ways. Basically made me figure out ways to get my brain to function just like modafinil, not taking modafinil, right? Whether it's phenylpiracetam, tyrosine stacks. Like we've got some phenylpiracetam, tyrosine stacks that are in the racetam God Guide that do that. It's powerful. So that's one of those things. But another distinction I came to understand is that, number one, good balanced stacks are better than just throwing something together. And then number two, the notion of the base and the complementary nootropic compounds. Here's an example. The definition basically is like you've got one base nootropic compound in a stack that provides most of the benefits. And then you have complementary other nootropics, whether 3 or 4 or 5 in the stack, that are taken in lower doses that either synergize with the base or add some sort of cofactor or some sort of other integrated element to that stack. But they're not the primary influential brain function modulating parts of the stacks. The base is. So a good example would be phenylpiracetam, as a base in 100 milligrams, right? That's a good, solid, strong dose of phenylpiracetam, and that's your base. That's your optimizing acetylcholine. There's a patent that people, somebody, either a person or a company, tried to get phenylpiracetam to use for brain-related fatigue diseases, wherein they talk about phenylpiracetam potentially having dopaminergic properties by being a dopamine reuptake inhibitor. I'm not entirely sure, but it feels dopaminergic to me. No one really went and studied that, right? I mean, there's not many studies, at least in that regard, relating to phenylpiracetam. But phenylpiracetam is very dopaminergic, seems dopaminergic to me. It's not just cholinergic. I know the difference, especially as it relates to my brain. But the thing is that I found anecdotally is that phenylpiracetam as a base stacks really well with supplementary dopaminergic and cholinergic compounds, okay? And particularly cholinergic cofactors with racetams, which would be choline sources, either CDP choline or alpha GPC, even choline bitartrate for some DMAE and centrophenoxine, and then the dopaminergic being L-tyrosine. Tyrosine, just as trying to give you as much value as possible, tyrosine stacks incredibly well with phenylpiracetam in the right dose. So let me give you an example, of a stack that's a pretty good, solid, powerful stack that encompasses this notion of the base and then the complementary nootropics that you add to it. 100 milligrams phenylpiracetam, 200 milligrams L-tyrosine, 175 milligrams alpha GPC. Okay, 100 milligrams phenylpiracetam, that is your base. That thing is going to crank up, utilization of acetylcholine in regions of the brain. It's likely dopaminergic to some extent, and that is the base of the stack. Phenylpiracetam is very powerful, for a lot of people. Some people compare it to modafinil. It's very like mental energy. It gives you sort of a body strength feeling. It's powerful. 200 milligrams tyrosine. For those that respond well to tyrosine, tyrosine is going to crank up catecholamines, epinephrine, norepinephrine. It also is a precursor to dopamine directly. Okay, so you're infusing the brain with dopamine and epinephrine and norepinephrine. You're raising levels of those compounds. So if there's a dopaminergic effect from phenylpiracetam, motivating effect, in other words, then you are synergizing with compounds that are related to dopamine or that are go on directly build dopamine and that are dopaminergic. The alpha GPC is a pretty good bet for combining with 100 milligrams of phenylpiracetam, because as far as anyone can tell, phenylpiracetam is really either modulating or putting the usage of acetylcholine into the system a lot more than baseline. So you're going to need, for most folks, some folks don't need it, but for a lot of other people, they're going to need some degree of a cholinergic infusion, acetylcholine. Particularly, alpha GPC has the most choline content per quantity, per dose. If you go, study it, like it has the most actual choline content. It's got more choline content per dose than CDP or any other choline source, right? So that's essentially the notion behind it. But what we did there, that's the stack too. 100 phenylpiracetam, 200 tyrosine, 175 GPC. What we did there though is we made phenylpiracetam the base, and then we added a mild dopaminergic alertness base, because we're talking about epinephrine and norepinephrine, supplement, a complementary nootropic. It's a complementary addition in lower doses. And then we added a cofactor, which is the alpha GPC, right, to give the brain more usable acetylcholine. As a last little gem, one of the things I've been finding, this is one of the things I made it distinction-wise later on in my years, dopaminergics and cholinergics together stack incredibly well, but you've got to get the doses surgical. There's the notion of taking cholinergics by themselves, and that is awesome and works all the time for folks. But there is sort of an increased powerful effect when you're working on choline, you're working on acetylcholine, and you're working on dopamine, and you're working on epinephrine, norepinephrine. It's very powerful. That's the basis, frankly, for the Cortex stack. So you've got uridine, CDP, both of those are working on both acetylcholine and dopamine, okay? So always just use that stack if you want. For more stacks like that, Racetam, God Guide, and Smarter, Better, Faster. But take the notion of the base and the complementary additional nootropic compounds in lower doses and use that and infuse that into your strategic formulation of your own personal stacks. Again, this channel and everything that we do is about using nootropics very, very surgically. It's so fun to me to be like, can I take 40 milligrams of modafinil, 200 milligrams pramiracetam, a choline source, and then some vinpocetine? Can I take the dose down a little bit? How does that affect continuity, affect surgical nootropics usage? That's what we're all about. Thanks for watching.